r/AskReddit. What terrifying confession has someone told you while drunk? I worked in a hospital and an alcoholic guy I knew from around my town came in. Of course he was very drunk, so he got a bed. He was homeless at this point. Just as he was starting to settle he screamed I slit his f***ing throat. So I went up to him and asked him to settle, and he started telling me that he did it while in the army and could never forgive himself for it. Cried himself to sleep and died in the local park a few months later. Just goes to show how little our country supports veterans who gave up their mental health to defend it. Yes, the thing that gets me is how homeless veterans is so common. How dare our country care so little about the people who fight for our country that they let them become homeless and go without proper therapy. It's a similar camp to doctors and essential workers now. Everyone says they're heroes. Nobody bothers to help them. Man, I would had to be an essential worker right now. Luckily I'm 15 and couldn't land a job before all of this. Thanks for calling me a hero. Could I have a living wage? I heard my mom tell her friend I was a mistake and the reason her and my dad divorced. That's why you don't eavesdrop. After my mom died I was going through her email. We never had a good relationship. Pretty much ever. Anyways I went in her mail and just did a search for my name. Found a part where she told my aunt how much she didn't like me and wishes I would just go away. It wasn't the least bit surprising. And I've said the same thing about her. But it still stung a bit. The thing we always fought about was her drinking. She was a chronic abusive alcoholic. As just a stranger this made me hurt for you. I hope you have moved on and are not only okay but thriving. Yay, I gasped for an internet stranger. Hugs man. If my ex was still in love with me, I wouldn't be married to you. Apostrophe. Oh my god. I still think about it. I don't think I'll ever forget it. It keeps me up at night sometimes. I hope that was the last thing they said to you. Once at a college party, this big guy got upset, picked up the table, and threw it across the room, shouting my uncle molested me. Everyone was terrified, but we all felt really bad for the guy. Damn. Fingers crossed somebody there helped him into therapy. That statement'll stop a party dead in its tracks. And honestly for his sake it's good that it did. Yeah, it was heartbreaking when he started to break down and cry after realizing what had just happened. Needless to say, the party was over. Next party, dude. Let's not invite Joe this time. But seriously, I hope that the moment was cathartic for him, man. Now that it was out there, that he was then able to talk about it and find closure and justice. I think it might have been cathartic for him because he was talking about it more calmly afterwards. As for seeking justice, I really don't know. My sister's boyfriend at the time told me he thought he might have fallen for the wrong sister. Doesn't compare to most of these, but my sister is my best friend. And I was so scared he might ruin that. Sounds like that shit was already ruined lol. Neither of us ever mentioned it to her. But yeah, they broke up not long after for other trust issues. Namely, he was stealing from her. Not a great dude. Edit. My sister and I are fine. Closer than ever. Did you ever mention that he said that to you? I can't decide if that's something I would want to know or not. Or if stirring up the past is worth it. Nope. I never told her. When he told me, I immediately was like, shut up, dude. Conversation over. And it never came up between us again. To his credit, he never ever gave the impression that he'd prefer to date me other than that one drunken outburst. I just figure, it's hard enough to feel good about yourself sometimes. Why make it harder by letting someone know their BF wasn't as into them as they thought? The relationship ended soon anyway, so it never became an issue. At a family gathering, my grandma got tipsy and started to tell stories from her childhood. While she does this every time, no matter tipsy or sober. Guess it's just a normal grandma thing. This time it took a dark turn. She told us a story that is the reason she hates to go to the dentist, and particularly hates the drilling part. She told us a story about when she was 6 years old. During WW2, my family lived in Hamburg, Germany, right next to the harbor. During a particular week in 1943, the city was continuously bombed and over 35,000 people died and more than 100,000 people were injured. The houses that were hit mostly burned down, creating a huge fire with such force that I sucked not only oxygen in, creating strong winds, but also people. The fire created such heat that people running out of their burning houses got stuck in the molten asphalt on the streets and burned to death. As it was all happening around her, that particular smell was present for over a week in her part of the city. Drilling in your tooth creates exactly that smell. My grandma had to stop the dentist as she recognized the smell immediately. This story shook us to the core as it came out of the blue. It still sends chills down my spine. For anybody who wants to read more about it, Operation Gomorrah. Night before his wedding day. I'm still in love with C underscore, but I'm still gonna marry F underscore tomorrow because it's too late now. After a work party, the wife of a colleague and me ended up being the last two people standing. We were both fairly drunk when she started telling me about how she was raped by a priest when she was a kid. The church covered it all up and the bastard never faced any charges. Most awkward co-worker encounter ever later. Hey Sam. So did you run into that traffic on 94? The priest was 94 years old. Emotional breakdown. And his name was Father Traffic. He honked when he came. Went on a work do, and my co-worker, a major stone-faced bland woman, got pretty drunk. Ended up telling me she discovered her dad's body when he hung himself. Needless to say, I realized why she was the way she was after that. I'm that woman now. I used to be a super cute young vibrant lady, but now I'm 32 and fat and dumpy. I don't take care of myself much. I held my dad as he died and then screamed and cried for what felt like hours. I feel like I'm still screaming and haven't woken up yet. I want to die. My ex told me that he had been molested by his sister between the ages of 6 to 11. She was 9 to 14. His dad walked in once and didn't do anything. His own family knew that he was being sexually abused for years and did absolutely nothing to protect him. I'm afraid it's likely that the sister was being molested by the father. She was the mom's daughter from another marriage and her first husband had molested her. My ex's dad was a second husband and no, he didn't touch her. He just didn't care that she touched his son. What is he and the sister's relationship like now? Did it badly affect him mentally? Haha. I put Adderall in your beer. We are gonna party till the sun comes up, bro. Apostrophe. Spiking people's drinks is so scummy. Is there any more to this story? At one point he whipped out a knife and put a hole in the surprisingly thin bathroom wall of the dive bar. Shithead carved his name above it. I had a massive mood swing and got in a really nasty parking lot fight. I woke up with dried blood on my knuckles, heart beating out of my chest, and paralyzing anxiety. The guy was like the Kenny Bania of our friend group, always spastic and obnoxious, and taking things past the point of being entertaining. No one ever wanted to hang out with him one-on-one. I thought I was being a good guy by giving him a shot. This effectively got him ostracized from our friend group. More like the Bill Cosby of the group. Had a buddy tell me his friend drunkenly confessed to him that he had killed his stepdad and made it look like a suicide. His stepdad had been abusive towards him and his mom for years, and it finally broke when he made it look like his stepfather had hung himself in their garage. I don't know who the friend was. I was never given a name or much else of the story. My mother's first husband, the sperm donor. I was 16. She had just walked out that same day, and he got extremely drunk and told me that I was never supposed to have been born and that I should have died with my brother. I asked him what he meant by my brother, since I had no siblings, and he confessed to beating the shit out of my mother when she was pregnant and she ended up in the hospital. I was born, but my twin brother died in the womb. At the time my mother's English, she's Polish, was not good. So he claimed to doctors that she just fell down the stairs and threatened to have her deported and used me as blackmail if she ever told anyone. I followed her soon after once she had contacted me that she'd found a place to stay. I asked her if she had anything to tell me regarding my birth, and she told me the same story. I guess that explains why I felt like I was missing a part of myself or my life. Wow. Sorry to hear that. I have a friend whose grandmother married her late husband's friend. One day while drunk he confessed to killing her first husband. She packed up the kids and left. She told me she poisoned her abusive ex. Was her name Wanda? Alice. A coworker was pretty inebriated when he told me that he hates his life. He hates his partner, and the only reason he's still married to her is because he loves his daughter and doesn't want to lose her. That they witnessed a mugging/stabbing outside of a bar and did nothing but watch the person bleed on the sidewalk. I asked why they didn't call 911, and the excuse was that they knew the stabbing and didn't want to snitch. Also possible to just freeze up out of shock. The first shooting I witnessed, I drove a half hour back to my apartment, sat down, and stared at a wall for God knows how long before thinking to call the police. By then who knows what had happened. The second, yet more than one. I just pulled into a parking lot a block over and made the call. Was my first thought. He might be a horrible person, but he could also have just gone into shock and not been able to do anything. The excuse about snitching could be something he came up with to brush off not doing anything. A lot of people assume they will rise to the occasion and do the right thing. But more often than not it just doesn't happen that way. You can plan out what you're doing or emergency scenario, but it's never going to account for your body just refusing to cooperate. My awesome boss at the time, who didn't say much about his life, confessed to me that his marriage wasn't something he wanted and that he's only staying in it for the love of his 2 young daughters. It was heartbreaking. Kinda heartwarming as well. I mean, he loves his children so much that he's willing to stay in an unhappy marriage. You'd say it's the least he could do, but I've heard enough stories of a parent f***ing up a child's childhood for pettier reasons. Edit, I guess not all that heartwarming. Results may vary. Yes, I grew up in a family like that. They separated when I was 14 and my brother was 16. But I wish it happened way sooner. It was always constant fighting and yelling between them, on top of both having severe mental problems. I love my parents dearly, but they definitely shouldn't have stayed together that long. I rarely saw signs of love between them. It definitely affected me growing up, and even currently as an adult, 26. Sounds a lot like my experience. Did your family also have basically zero traditions? My GF was raised as an only child by a single mom, and they have 10x the traditions as my family of 5 did. This sounded a lot like my experience too. My family doesn't have many traditions at all either, and I never would have connected the two things. Makes sense though. It's always a little uncomfortable when people ask what my family traditions are during holiday season. I had a boyfriend who never talked about his past ever. He talked so fondly of his old state, but just about the actual state, never about people. If you treat a prod further he would just say, oh well, it doesn't matter anymore. We were young. I was about 19 and he was probably like 23 or so. He drank a shit ton all the time and whatever, we were young, so I just thought that it was normal and all in good fun. One night while shit-faced he started talking about how much he loved going into the woods and how he and his friends enjoyed playing on the rivers and streams in his old state. Then he got very sad and started to babble a bit incoherently. I heard him say something along the lines of his friend came to his house on meth and they were all also on drugs. Then more incoherently babbled then something about his friend getting shot in the face. Then more incoherent babbling, then something about that is why he can never go home again. He was so desperately sad and missed his home very much. You could tell every time the topic came up. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he accidentally, or on purpose, killed a guy and was on the run. I have my money on accident because he seemed so distraught. Boo, you never know. Also, you barely know anyone or anything at 19 years old. I often wonder if he ever had to face those demons. My parents told me, while very drunk, that they were very kinky, into heavy BDSM, and that my dad was a bottom. My stepmom reassured me that they were also kinkier than I was. Not fun. That's uncomfortable and weird, but kinda funny at the same time. At least they have fun, I guess. You've reached the end. You're a star. Destroy the subscribe button for more like that.